Good Erev Shabbos, Young Israel. I hope all are well and stay so. The aftermath of the terrible sin of the spies of the Meraglim, so the Chumash metes out God's punishment to that generation, and then the Torah tells us, "Va'avdi chalev ekev ha'isa ruach acheres imo." That's my servant Kalev, on account of the different spirit that was with him. Vayamalei acharai, he faithfully followed me. Therefore, v'aviyasiv el ha'aretz asher ba'shama v'zaro yori shana. That's he will have as be brought to the land, and as we see later on, special inheritance into the city of Chavron. Asks the Chidah in the Sefer Pnei David, I don't understand. Why is only Kalev singled out? What about Yoshua? There were two good guys, not one. Explains the Chidah, Yoshua was also a tzaddik, and yet the reward of Kalev was greater. Kalev is singled out more than Yoshua, inasmuch as the two had different approaches. Yoshua took a straightforward approach. Yoshua was direct, was faithful, was principled, and didn't bend. Kalev was also principled, also didn't bend, but was not quite as direct. Kalev, as we might say today, knew how to play the political game. Its Kalev was Ekev Haisa Ruach Acheres Imo. Says Rashi, a different spirit. Ruach Acheres, Shtei Ruchos. He had two different personas. Achas bepev, achas belev. He said one thing and he thought something else. Limiraglim amar and yimachem be'etza. To the Miraglim, he was one of them. I'm on your team. I'm not like Yoshua. Uvelibo hayalomar ha'emes. All the way through, his intentions were to be one of them, but then outwardly, but then to come out and to declare and to defend when the time was right. And that's why they came hayaba kach lashtikam. And that's why earlier on the Psukim tell us that Kalev, not Yoshua, had the ability to calm down the mob after the Meraglim had worked them into a frenzy. As we learned earlier, Shenemar vayahes Kalev, shayusver kamosam. As they thought that Kalev was going to say like them, so when Kalev got up to speak, he was able to silence them, and then he changed his tune. Then he told them what had to be said. But Yoshua didn't have that ability, because Yoshua was known to be in opposition. Different ways for a leader to lead, different ways for a tzaddik to lead. That's what sometimes a tzaddik has to roll up his sleeves and get involved in politics and be two-faced and be diplomatic when necessary. They once, at a base of, if I'm not mistaken, Shlomo Auerbach was once approached during one of the contentious Israeli elections involving several of the other Gedolim. A bunch were on one side, another on another side, and a fellow approached the later Shlomo Auerbach and complimented the Rebbe. Rebbe, I have to say how much I admire you. Unlike the other Gedolim, both of whom very, very prominent, these other Gedolim, you have remained above the politics. You've remained pure, and for that we admire the Rebbe. So Shlomo back, I don't agree with you. I am able to do what I do, to stay in the base measure, to paskin halacha, and not get involved in politics, because these other Gedolim, these other tzaddikim are doing my work. We need both. They're rolling up their sleeves and getting dirty. Somebody has to do it. I'm fortunate not to have to do that, but it doesn't in any way diminish what they're accomplishing. And in many ways, as we learn from the Chidah, sometimes that second approach is that much more difficult, where of the two, Yoshua was a hero and Kalev was a hero, and yet Kalev is singled out for extra reward for the city of Hebron. That's Kalev is singled out because he took the more difficult approach, perhaps it more suited his personality than that of Yoshua. Be that as it may, regardless, both were tzaddikim, but both had the courage to stand up, but stood up and stood out in different ways. As we were taught in the parak last week, that kala oskim amatzibur, those involved in communal service, you oskim l'shem shamayim, have to do so for the sake of heaven, whichever approach they take. It could be a political approach, a more diplomatic approach, an approach where they say one thing and then they get themselves involved and do what they have to do in a different way, like Kalev, whichever way it may be, it has to be L'Shem Shamayim, and thus we merit leaders who have the ability to do what has to be done, each in their own unique derech. Have a great Shabbos.